The leaders of the bipartisan Congressional Ukraine Caucus are reiterating calls for decisive action against Russia. The group just published a piece in USA Today saying Putin plans to crush liberty in Ukraine. Free world must unite to stop him. Joining me now to discuss is Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, a Democrat from Ohio. She sits on the House Appropriations Committee and is the co-founder and co-chair of the bipartisan Ukraine Caucus. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. I want to quote some more from your piece. You say that the free world cannot sit back as he alone, Putin, isolated from the norms of decent behavior, beats the Russian drums of war. I'm curious, who is this piece targeted towards? Is it more the administration? Is it a Russian audience? Or is it certain factions within the U.S. population, certain TV hosts and opinion hosts who seem to be coddling up to Putin and suggesting that the U.S. should not be intervening in any way?
Well, first of all, I think our efforts are aimed at strengthening America's position in terms of the defense of liberty on the European continent. We have a change in generations in terms of leadership on many levels, and many have forgotten how many Americans lie in graves across Europe for the cause of liberty. Ukraine is the scrimmage line for liberty in Europe today, and it has been the Congress, Article 1 of the Constitution, the Congress, that has stood strongly behind Ukraine's right to be free. Back in the 90s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the people of Ukraine voted 90% to be independent. They want to access West. Only one country is standing in their way, Russia.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
So it's partly informative, what we're doing informative, but also reasserting the Congress as the lead in terms of standing just right beside Ukraine every step of the way, including its defense.
Yeah, I was just going to go back and add into that history that you just outlined that Russia also promised to honor Ukraine's sovereignty once it gave up its nuclear weapons as well. And Russia clearly has shown that it has disregard for its own promises made in the past. But in terms of what can be done now to prevent a second invasion, do you think the administration has done everything possible on its end to deter Putin at this point?
I think President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Secretary Blinken from the State Department, Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman, we have the finest people in our country attempting to address this situation with our European allies, the ambassadors and the heads of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Now France and Germany are more vocal in terms of what they are willing to do, and our own efforts to help to secure energy independence for the European continent remain firm. And we see the Biden administration working on many levels right now. Congress is right behind them. I'd like to think Congress is in the lead because we actually have provided the defense security funds for Ukraine, as well as opposition on both sides of the aisle to turning on the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, right to the heart of Germany. We need to find ways to make Europe, as well as Ukraine, energy independent.
Yeah, listen, that's a question that many have been asking. They have some of the richest economies in the world had years to become energy independent, and clearly now they're scrambling to find an alternative, right, for perhaps what Russia could do that it's done before, and that's weaponize oil and natural gas supplies. It was interesting. I was listening to a former Ukrainian official yesterday say that while this U.S. aid and military aid is helpful, what the country really needs now specifically is anti-aircraft defense, right, that a lot of attention has been focused on anti-tank prevention, right, javelin missiles and what have you. But they are really concerned about what could happen overhead and the Russian Air Force, which is outpowerful, outpowers them to begin with. But they are concerned about what could happen if there is an invasion within the early hours. Do you think the U.S. is doing enough on that front?
I believe that those weapons are being moved into position. Of course, they are very long range. And Russia must understand that the answer to this situation lies at the negotiating table. If you remember back just a few years when Russia shot down the Malaysian airliner, we know their capability to do harm to innocent people. And we cannot leave Ukraine vulnerable. I want to thank the nations of Poland and, as I mentioned, the Baltic countries as well for their courage and for their strength in alliance. I believe that the nations of Europe, there were 30 of them that met with Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman recently in Geneva, and every single one stood by Ukraine's side.
Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.